You're in insurance, but you're very much focused on digital transformation. What does that mean to you?
It means basically to help our clients to live in the world where expectations of customers are changing, expectations to brands, expectations with regards to products, to the services that they get, they are changing. The experience that those customers would expect is different from what they had in the past. And that requires an adjustment on the client side, on our client side, in the way they operate. Those adjustments can have two main focus areas. One is on efficiency. So many companies use digitalization and technology to become more efficient, which is great. But the other one, and probably more important one, is to really think about the value proposition of those companies towards their clients, thinking about how can they grow revenues or keep the revenues.
Ultimately it's about the client, it's about the customer.
Ultimately it's about the customer.
But it is really about changing business, isn't it, and the way we work?
Yes. So we start with the customer, and you should start with the customer in mind, you know, and understand what they would look for, and that will require the large companies, which are our clients, to change.
How does this impact your employees?
It has a similar impact, I think, as to everybody. So it's also a challenge for ourselves. We have to find different ways on how we work with our clients. It's a much more collaborative work. Traditionally in the consulting has been a business model where typically our people have been working at the clients and helping the clients to do whatever we have to do. Now things are changing a bit. A lot of the work actually is being done in studios or studio-like work, or it comes back to us, and that has an impact on our people too. Yeah.
We're talking in quite general terms here. I'm wondering if you can give me a kind of concrete example of a digitalization in or at Accenture.
So within Accenture, one thing that we've implemented is an artificial intelligence engine, we call it Sherlock, which helps people to find other experts and helps people to find answers to questions very, very quickly and in a very, very efficient way. We have become a large organization. It's actually not that easy to find the right expert and the right answer to whatever the question is in a very efficient and quick way. And
so that in turn has an impact on the customer?
That in turn has an impact to the customers. Our people are then faster, they are more efficient and effective in finding their peers, which they want to bring to the customer, and eventually it's good for everybody. Yes.
How do you see the future then in insurance, specifically with regard to what you do here?
Well, insurance is obviously a quite, in a way, complicated industry. You have life insurance, you have P&C insurance, you have personal insurance in the retail space, and you have commercial insurance. So I think you have to look at the picture in a differentiated way. I think we will see the most changes relatively quickly, in my view, in the P&C retail space. And it's also, if you think...
Just remind us what P&C is.
So property and casualty, the most prominent example that most of the people are still aware of is automotive insurance. And I think it's quite understandable that if cars become more intelligent more and more and more, even become self-driving or autonomous, that the kind of the risk is changing. You'll have less accidents, you'll have less parking issues, etc. And that has an impact on the insurance.
Do you think our premiums will go up then, if there are fewer accidents?
No, if there are fewer accidents, the premiums actually should go down. Whether they will be going down is another topic, and how quickly they will go down, obviously, is pretty much in the hands of the insurance companies.
I mean, there's lots of buzzwords surrounding your role and what you do here. Digital age, Internet of Things, next generation. What do these kind of terms mean for you?
For me, it is primarily about innovation and making innovation happen. It's great to have good ideas, but at the end, an idea is only a good idea if it's really implemented. So for me, it means to be creative on what could be new ways of working with our clients or our clients with our customers, and actually have the courage to make these things happen. So I think courage in the age of digitalization, I think is an important element.
Do you consider yourself to be a disruptor?
I'm probably more the evolutionary guy than the revolutionary guy. People would still say I'm one that has a good ability to think out of the box, and bring in alternative ideas. Disruption is a big word, and I think
it's also a buzzword as well.
It's a bit overused. We have an inflation of overused words like digital and disruption, and it's really hard to see huge disruptions. Obviously, if you, in hindsight, look at some industries, you have seen dramatic disruption to those industries. The media industry, the newspaper industry, the music industry. And it happened, but it was not that it happened from one day to the other. It was somehow people were aware that something is happening, and then it depends on how you react to that.
I mean, one of the biggest disruptions, I guess, to the insurance industry was Philomena Colatrea, who said that the 10,000 franc deduction should be introduced to kind of lower premiums when it comes to health insurance. Do you agree with that kind of idea?
I don't think that we should primarily steer the insurance through the premiums. And I think we should move away from just thinking of the insurance product, which is a product which is encapsulated in a premium, towards what actually can be the overarching objective, particularly in health insurance. And it's better to make people aware of health issues, to bring them to a healthier life, and somehow come to an incentive where actually people and insurance companies have an incentive to make people more healthy, as opposed to have an incentive to benefit from it when people get ill and sick, and then become active.
Going back to digitalization, how concerned are you about regulation in your sector?
Regulation, it's quite funny actually. When we had the first discussions about digitalization in insurance, and we created a European digital insurance network, and had our first workshops probably 5-6 years ago, to think about has digitalization an impact on insurance, yes or no, and had all of these discussions. And at the end of the day, there was one statement that was made by the group of insurance company where they said, maybe in this whole thing the regulator is our friend, because it helps us to avoid a disruption from one day to the other. It helps us to have this as a smooth transition. And so, which is probably true. I think some sort of regulation is needed. I think we always have to be very, very careful that we are not overdoing it. What I'm more concerned with is how can we get rid of regulation once it's not necessary anymore.
Do you think Switzerland is particularly prone to that over-regulation?
Switzerland has probably a reputation that we follow regulation quite closely, and that particularly in insurance, there is this word of the Swiss finish, yes, which means there is maybe a little bit more than actually necessary, and I think that's not good. We should have level playing fields, fair enough, but we should not overdo it.
And how do we compare here in Switzerland with the likes of Germany and Austria, where you also oversee digitization?
In general, I truly believe that we still have a very different attitude in Switzerland compared to Germany, as from a general point of view, there is a lot of responsibility that we still put to an individual. We expect, the state expects that an individual to a large degree takes care for him or herself, which I believe is correct. Whereas in other countries, there is more and more an opportunity coming up that the government, the state, the authorities will take care for you, and you don't have to worry, which is a very difficult and dangerous statement. I think we have to continue to make people aware that there is a large degree of responsibility on each of us to make sure that we have a future, that our children have a future, and we look for ourselves.
And how do we compare when it comes to digitalizing the industry and your role there?
There's kind of two different markets in Switzerland. There's a domestic market, so companies, organizations which tend to be operating in Switzerland only, and then there's the other ones which are in the global competitive world, and they're not the same. Everybody who is in the global competitive world sees the pressure that is coming from what's happening in the rest of the world. Whereas, if you're only dealing in Switzerland, there is less pressure. It's a bit more cozy. There's not really a burning platform to change anything, and that I think makes it harder for management to really initiate changes.
Is this the kind of thing that you are warning about in your Top 500 2018 report, which has just come out, which is saying it's a wake-up call for companies in Switzerland? Could you just explain that a little bit?
No, we have been looking at the top 500 companies, trying to find out the most successful ones in terms of growth and profitability over the last 5 years. We have done this now for 6 or 7 years, and so we start to have an understanding of what are actually the companies doing which are more successful, and it is becoming evident that those companies are more successful which have an outward-looking strategy, as opposed to just focus on efficiency. It's understandable that many companies focus on efficiency, particularly in Switzerland. Since January 2015, we have a bit of an issue with our currency, or a significant issue with our currency, which focuses companies to be more efficient. However, you will not be succeeding in any market just by being efficient. You have to have ideas on how to generate revenue and how to grow. So that is,
and that comes down to digitalization.
And that is this, as I said before, that is this second piece of digitalization, which is thinking about how you can either protect your revenue space or add additional revenues to your business by entering new ways of businesses. So that is one element. The other element, which we see, is that the more successful companies look more at the soft skills of their people as just the hard skills. Yes, we know that we have a high demand in great functional technical engineering skills in Switzerland, and this is relatively scarce. But there are companies that say, even though we get those people with the right technical skills, they don't have the right attitude. And we need people who have an attitude of being creative, courageous, and having a will to change next to everything else, and that is a tough one if you feel in a cozy market, because you feel secure. And in fact, I mean, if you look around you, we don't have any real problems, so it feels relatively safe here.
Is this the future of work then, this whole soft skills and developing the real personal touch?
I think it's an important element, and along with that comes this, again, buzzword, lifelong learning term, which basically means that you have to have a reason to learn lifelong. And if you feel everything is fine and I don't have to change, I don't have to be prepared to take on additional things or new things, then you will not be doing that. So I think it's very closely connected to the workforce of the future.
Who are your future workforce then?
I believe a lot actually in the apprenticeship model, and that's a strength of Switzerland. Even though the trend is going, in my view, a little bit in the wrong direction, particularly around the bigger cities, as Zurich, where you have a huge pressure on people to go to an academic education. But I truly believe that the apprenticeship model is a great model to bring out the right people. We see it ourselves. So we have our own apprentices. We hire people that have completed apprenticeship and maybe some additional education. And those people are at a younger age more mature, more flexible, and more prepared for the future. Plus, the apprenticeship model, as a model, is, if you like, producing the people or the skills that the market needs. It's not producing something which somebody hopes to be used in the future, but it produces exactly the skills that are in demand, because all of these people have a job.
So is Switzerland then kind of a ripe ground for finding talent through schemes like this, or do we struggle with that?
I think we are a good ground for finding talent, and we have great talent. We have an excellent basic education. We have excellent secondary education. We have great universities. It is a great talent. Obviously, it's relatively small. You know, it's not huge in the international context. So a specific skill can become scarce relatively quickly. And that is why we are dependent on getting in the right skills also from the outside.
And that's why we have to continue to learn, even in work.
So I think it has to be a good mixture. Be open and accept that we need to get in some people to help us here in doing the right things on the one hand, but on the other hand, also be prepared to continue to learn, as you say, and accept those challenges, and don't expect that things will be as good in the future as they were in the past.
So you're very committed to Switzerland,
yes.
Accenture. Yes, the future here.
I'm born Swiss. I have 5 boys. I want them to have a future in this country. If they want to go outside, fair enough, but I can't really influence that. But I want to contribute a little bit to their future here.
With 5 children, how do you manage your work-life balance?
It's a tough one. 2 of them are already grown up, so they're relatively easy to handle. And the smaller ones, obviously, my wife is taking a lot of care of them. Our family life is pretty much focusing on the weekends and on vacation. I take as much as vacation as I can. As long as they're small, they have lots of vacation, which is good for me. So I do that. And I've always, since I'm now 30 years in the consulting business, I've always said I will not work on the weekends, and I never say never, but I hardly ever do that.
Do you take any lessons from home and apply them within your work, do you think?
Well, the biggest coach that I have, obviously, is sitting at home.
Yes.
And I think to have a safe home always brings you back to the realities of the world. And we should never forget that me and many of my peers, we are part of a very special group of people that do not necessarily represent the majority of the citizens here. And I think being at home, and and not just the family, but the friends, and maybe your friends that you have from primary school or from where you grow up, which all have different perspectives. They help you to stay with your feet on the ground and don't get too creative about things that are happening.
I mean, you said yourself you have a very Swiss background and you have been with Accenture for many, many years. Do you think that lack of diversity has impacted your career at all? Do you think that some people have to move out and move on to enrich their career?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been working from here, but I've been following my clients. So I've been working in London, in France, in the United States, in Germany, Austria. So and still now I travel quite a bit, and I do think it's necessary to make those experiences to get exposed to different ways of leading, to different cultures, and to other areas. And I had the luxury, if you like, or the good experience to be able to do that from here.
And so that experience, I suppose, kind of helps with dealing with that whole Swiss stigma that one cannot fail. Do you adhere to that, or do you encourage experimentation?
I do encourage experimentation. I encourage my people as much as possible to not accept any given thing and try something else if they believe it's not going to work. And I try to be, one of the people that can back them up. I think we have to. This is an element we really have to work on, which is not easy to see if you only stay here. It's only if you go to. If you spend time in China, in India, in Indonesia, in Mexico, in all of these countries, and see how people are working there, the different attitude they have, then you start to realize.
I get the impression that you're very forward-thinking, you're very passionate. Does that translate in your management style? Do you lead by example?
I hope so. I hope so. I tend to say I'm not leading. I take responsibility for a business, which means I have to enable my people to do what they believe is the right thing to do.
And how much contact do you have with the people who you manage?
I mean,
every day.
Every day. I mean, our business is our people and our clients. There's nothing else. So that is basically what I do.
And how do you view your role as CEO of Switzerland?
So I obviously need to stand in for the strategy that Accenture believes is the right one. So my role includes implementing that for the local market here. It is in my responsibility to keep the group of managing directors together that we have here. I want to be somebody, as you mentioned, that the people can look at and understand, what is going to be important, not only now but also in the future. And I'm obviously also the face of Accenture in Switzerland to many in the outside. I would like to demonstrate with what I'm doing to the people at all of these levels that it's important not just to focus on the business, but also on things outside the business and also for yourself.
I mean, you have lots of interests outside of...
I do engage quite a bit in stuff outside outside Accenture, which I'm quite vocal about, yes.
Yes, I mean, I've written down here Avenir Swiss, Economy Swiss, ICTS Switzerland, which is the kind of digital umbrella.
Switzerland, yeah.
Yes, I mean, all these, they're very future-thinking organizations or future-focused organizations. Is that deliberate?
That is deliberate because I'm interested in Switzerland. I would like to understand what's going to happen. Avenir Swiss, a liberal think tank, is really thinking ahead and putting the fingers on the right buttons that we have to be careful.
Where do you think you'll be in 2030? This is a question that they've asked.
2030, how much is that in the future? 12 years, I'll still be working. I hope I'll still be working. I cannot imagine myself sitting at home and doing nothing else. I hope I'll still be working, doing something.
And also you're board director of Stossbahn.
Yes.
What's your involvement there?
Big.
Huge regeneration there.
And again there I was with the team, but we had the pleasant experience after 14 years to create the steepest funicular in the world, so something really spectacular. This has been taking a lot of my spare time in the evenings, mainly in the evenings or during the nights. But it has given me great satisfaction because I've been able, together with this organization, to create something which is going to be there for 100 years. So, I mean, there's not too many things
future thinking,
that you can
preparing
shape
for the future.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
It's a pleasure.